Hey, hey there. Glad to have you in the building with me tonight. We're saying I'm getting indication that nobody's hearing me, but I'm seeing audio go out. So if I'm not getting audio to you, let me know. Let me know that you can just put a one in the chat if you're hearing me, and a two in the chat if you're not hearing me. And I'm so glad to have you all in the building with me this evening.
You good?
Today it's going to be a little different. It's going to be the third episode of a Ask Me Anything. And I want questions. And I want questions from you all. If you don't ask questions, it's going to be a pretty short show tonight. But I want to welcome you to the Purples for Productivity show. And we're going to get right into questions. I do want to say I had an opportunity this week to participate in an event with Alec Johnson from Take One Tech channel. And it was great for me because I knew I was going to have a set of people panel list that I needed to ask questions of. And so I prepared questions. I had like 50 questions to choose from that I had prepared. And because I knew who the panelists were going to be, it helped me frame the questions that would fit them, but also give answers to the community that showed up for the event. I think there were over 2,000 people registered for the event, and it was phenomenal. 3 days of just feeding us from being good on camera to really leveling up our digital stage. So, the panel discussion was great for me, and I'm going to go back and rewatch and take more notes, not just on that panel discussion, but on all of the sessions because they were all phenomenal and there was something to take away and apply in our everyday life. So, I thank you all for being here. I'm going to say hello to a couple of folks who have decided they wanted to show up this evening, and I'm going to start with Hey Roy, Tech Troublemaker. Happy to have you in the building with us this evening. Put some questions in the comments so that I can answer them. Good evening to Frank Jackson, one of our moderators. Moderator, salute to you. Glad to have you in the building. And of course, the emotional CEO. Happy Friday, Live Tribe. We are back, our regular Friday routine, us hanging out together. Thank you so much. Another one of our moderators here with us this evening. So glad to always have you in the building. Oh my goodness. The little red car is here. Hey, Tora. We heard from her about a week ago. She was on here and I was peppering her with questions. So bring your questions. The rest of those 1,000 questions you didn't ask last night, go ahead and ask them tonight, Miss Tora. So glad to have you in the building. Again, I want to remind you all tonight is about you, me answering your questions because I'm making space to just be here to answer questions. Questions about personal productivity, questions about workflows, questions about process. That is what what I want to answer questions for. And so thank you, Roy, for asking a question here. And let me get it up on the screen. And I'm going to go right into answering them. If I can figure out what I'm doing. Yes, I did. I did ask for it. So Roy's question is, how can one get focused on being productive when they are feeling overwhelmed? That's a great question. And Roy, I'm going to just kind of share with you something, so I can absolutely relate, and I'm going to tell you why I can relate. I started a new project. This is week two, the end of week two of this new project. It's very, very hectic. There's hardly any time in the day. I'm in meetings back to back. They pop up all the time. And I haven't had to be in that routine for a little bit. So it has forced me to look at my own process, my own way of um, getting work done, what I focus on, how do I stay focused. And one thing came true for me is I keep it simple. So, one is keeping it simple. I talked about yesterday how my 3 core tools is paper, my planner with one of my fountain pens. I use um, Hobonichi paper, well, a Hobonichi planner, and my favorite paper, even in a journal, is Toma River paper. It's super, super thin. And so that's number one. I do start with most often I start with analog, especially when I'm thinking through things and I'm just puzzling out any problem or idea, or my mind is flooding with things that are going. I grab a fountain pen, one my journal, and I just start writing. So that's number one. How to feel productive. You're talking about how to feel productive, not how to be productive or how to get focused. So number one, the focus is going to come from what you want to focus on. But my second tool I talked about is using Evernote, and I can show you some screen shares tonight of some of the things that I do. But what I do in Evernote, you can use any tool. In any tool, you can use Google, you can use Word, you can use PowerPoint, you can use an Excel spreadsheet, you can use Notion. The tool absolutely doesn't matter. What matters is the way I go about using it. The third thing that I use, I and for electronic is my quick capture, and that is I use drafts. So, and the reason I use drafts for quick capture electronically is I can speak into it. I can automate moving the content that I put in there out of there into Evernote, into Google, into a Word doc, into a PowerPoint, into Apple Notes, into Apple Reminders, you name it, I can get it there. So it eliminates me doing double data entry. Once I get it in the drafts, I'm good. And I can transcribe, voice record, and it transcribes what I'm putting in. So drafts, my paper journal, and Evernote are my core. So getting focused is knowing, and all of that is knowing what you want to focus on. So decide what it is you want to focus on. And when you decide what it is you want to focus on, by definition, you're taking other things, you're saying no to other things. When you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. So the question is, what is it you're willing to say no to? I shared this change in my what happened in the way my week has been going for the last 2 weeks. Well, with that became obvious. I'm using 2 different computers, client computer and office computer. Well, what I decided I would say no to is I'm not going to try to work on both computers all day. It was too much. I couldn't, I was bouncing back and forth. So I closed down the office computer. I focused on the client computer. And at about 4 o'clock, 4:30 most days, then I'll open up the office computer, shut down the client computer. I say yes to one and no to the other. I'm not bouncing back and forth. The second thing is for me, even with this client project, I block time on my calendar, and I'm okay with declining a meeting when someone schedules a meeting that I've already got something scheduled. I will offer them another date and time, pure and simple. So the focus comes from I set those boundaries for myself and I set those expectations. And as a part of the my daily routine, it's looking ahead. I shared in a earlier one of my early videos. I probably should do it again. It's every day I look at my calendar and I look at 3 days minimum. I look at yesterday, particularly during the week. Yesterday, because I want to capture anything that I didn't capture that I need to bring forward either into today or another day. I look at what's on there for today and I look on there for what's on there for tomorrow. And frankly, I do it twice a day. I do it in the morning and when I'm shutting down, especially in the evening, I look out 3, 4, 5 days to see what's coming up. I do that in my personal calendar, my corporate calendar. I do it in just when I say my calendar, I mean in every part of my life. That keeps me focused on what is the priority? What are the priorities? And those priorities determine my productivity because I am going to accomplish the things that are priorities within the time that I've allocated. So being productive is, what are you trying to be? What are you trying to produce? And that emotional feeling of being overwhelmed is that distraction. And it's not even trying to do too many things or trying to, um, the word just went out of my head, multitask. Not tr I don't multitask well, so trying to multitask. Also, trying to answer a phone call and type up an email at the same time. Trying to get your thoughts out and respond to try to read chat messages. You all know I turn off notifications even in my corporate world, notifications are turned off. And I get to those notifications in Teams or Zoom or whatever chat tool you use at the time that I want to get to them. Everyone who works with me, one of my hard rules is if you have something that is an absolute emergency, call me. Pick the phone and call me. Let me just tell you, my telephone rarely rings because I've trained people how to function with me. So that's how one can be can get to focus and focusing on being productive and not on feeling overwhelmed. If you have a follow-up question, please feel free to put it in chat. I will be happy to answer. All right. Let's move to the next question. I know that was a long answer, but there was a lot in there and I didn't want to just gloss over it. All right, here we come. Well, Florence has to learn how to use a computer, but we're going to go with this. How do you audit your systems to find inefficiencies? So, great question. And this is one that I really like. And how I audit it to find inefficiencies is I notice when I'm feeling stress or when I find that I'm trying to do something and it's taking longer than I believe it should, or I find that there's a task that I'm doing and I've got to take 2, 3, 4, 5 different steps to get there, and it really shouldn't take it. Or I notice that this is not going smooth. I'm going to give you an example. And I actually was going through it tonight, so I know this is something that I need to deal with for inefficiency. Somewhere along the line, I did something with my Stream Deck setup for the profile for tonight's show. So the buttons that are usually there weren't set up. I don't know what happened, but had this profile set up for since October, and all of the scenes are set. So tonight when I went to check them, but I still check them, right? They're not there. So that is an inefficiency. Why? Because they're set a certain way, and those buttons get me to certain places in the show, and I noticed that. So that's something here on the computer. But I also notice things around just in my environment, in the house, um, moving around, things like that. I noticed I was struggling with the way I had some things organized in my bathroom. I was like, why is I've got to move this to get to this? Like, why am I doing all of that? I took a step back and said, you can fix this. And I took a few minutes, it didn't take long, and just reorganized the way I had things based on when I use them and how I used them. So auditing is really me paying attention to how I get work done and how I'm interacting with my environment. My planners in the evening when I shut down goes in one place. I actually have a work journal. I'm gonna show it to you. This is a journal that for this project that I'm on. This is a planner. It has about, I mean, a journal. It has about 200 sheets of paper in it, but because it's Toma River paper, it's super thin paper. But this is like 200 sheets of paper. This notebook is solely for this project that I just started. Nothing else goes in there. It saves in a particular place and I put a dot on it so I know that that's because I have a bunch of these. So this do blue dot tells me what it's for. So I do things like that. And if I don't, like I knew the project was coming up, I was like, let me start a notebook right now. So my audit is ongoing. I'm constantly paying attention to where I'm finding friction. Like if I something that I wanna use, it's not where I've trained my brain to look for it, I literally can't find it, I have no idea where it would be. I have a basket that I put my keys in. If those keys are not in that basket, I have no earthly idea where they are. So, I'm pretty, specific about where things are because I'll naturally go look for them where I've said, "This is where this lives." Even down to my kitchen. I tried rearranging where things were in the cupboards, like putting things that was like, "Mm-mm, you've already trained your brain that this is in this cupboard and this is in this drawer and this is in it. Don't move it because you'll never be able to figure it out." So that's how I audit my systems and systems, both physical in my space as well as digital. All right. So if that helped, let me know. Let me know. Let me know. The next question is what KPIs do you track that most people might overlook? Um, how much of my work I'm getting done of that I really care about. I'm going to use it in in this case of this content. Am I getting out? For example, this month my goal is to produce 31 videos, pre-recorded videos. Am I on track or am I off track? I'm not trying to track how many like I didn't set a goal for a number of subscribers or watch hours. I tracked what I could control. And I can control whether I get the idea, outline the content, record the video, get a thumbnail some kind of way, and upload the video and make it public. I can control that. I cannot control if people watch it. I cannot control if people can subscribe to the channel. I cannot control how much of the video someone watches, but I can control what I do. So that's what I track. I track the thing. Yesterday, Alec talked about tracking process activities. Those are things you can control. I've talked about it in terms of habits. Oftentimes, people are trying to track outcomes, and many times we don't control the outcome. What we control is our activity. So I track my activity. If my goal is to write every day, am I writing? Even if I only write 50 words, am I writing every day? My goal is to read every day. Am I actually reading every day? My goal is to pray every day. That's important to me. Am I praying every day? My goal is to read my Bible every day. I may not read a whole chapter, but I'm going to read some portion of my Bible every day. So those are the KPIs that I track, and many people may overlook some of them. But those are things that Florence can control. If that's helpful, let me know. Okay, we got another question here, and I'm glad you're bringing them because nobody else seems to be asking. What steps are you taking to future proof your brand in spaces that are constantly shifting? Um, probably not as many as I should. Um, I'm primarily on LinkedIn, and I have not really pushed the Purpose for Productivity or Equip Institute on LinkedIn. It's really more just me personally, and I've had that account for a very long time. Most other than YouTube, but social media accounts are all my name. I don't use another name. I probably should, as you say, should, woulda, shoulda, coulda. Probably would be a good idea. I haven't gotten there yet, and I haven't made it a priority to get there yet. My website is set. I've got a host of domains that I've had for a long time, like, for example, my name in multiple ways so that I own those and somebody else is not grabbing them. Had a really great comment from one of the moderators that I should probably trademark my own name. Haven't done that. So, lots yet to do there, but those are the things that really my website, my own content, keeping track, a list and an inventory of what I produce myself, even when I publish it. Like if I publish something in a LinkedIn post, even if it's a minor post, if it's something I care about, I keep a backup copy of what I wrote and put out so that I know A, I did it, B, when I did it. So those are steps that I'm taking. I would love to hear what you're doing. And hey, Michael Flemings, glad to have you here in the building. If you got a question about personal productivity, systems, workflows, please drop it in chat. And here's this other moderator who told me to trademark my own name. Hey, Miss Inanea, so glad to have you in the building with us serving the community. Um, So questions, Q colon, get your questions in. Yeah, love what people think that they have the right to summon me with a ding and they don't. Absolutely. Absolutely. You control that. That don't mention that thing. My stream decks decided to have amnesia and I have to reprogram it when I let it off ground. You grounded your stream deck. Okay, you grounded your stream deck. Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Michael, for reminding everyone to put a Q colon and also to subscribe. Hey, David Hunt, welcome. Glad to have you in the building with us this evening. Those are great questions, Tora, that you've asked. Anyone else have a question? Again, tonight is all Q&A. I want to answer your questions and just have some community time. This may be one of those that doesn't get a lot of replays. I'm okay with that. But I want to give you all time. And over the last couple of weeks I've been dropping videos. You have a question about one of the videos? Please go ahead and ask it. I'll be glad to answer. If you have a question about something that was asked last night on the panel, ask it. I'll be glad to answer it. All right. Yes, ma'am. Okay, yes, ma'am. I will show you all something because I'm making a shift in my system back to auditing. I'm making a shift in my workflow because for years now, years and years and years, I have used OmniFocus as my task manager. And a couple of years ago, Evernote included a task manager inside of Evernote. So I'm going to switch and hopefully this will come up correctly. Yeah. So I'm going to share the screen while I'm waiting for more comments to come in. And the reason I want to talk about this is because you may find yourself in a position, in a situation, or at a time where you um, want to make a shift in what tool you're using. So I'm making a shift in a tool. But here's the key. Let me go back to this. The tool I'm shifting to is a tool I already know. I already know Evernote. So I'm not learning something that I'm not familiar with. I'm adding a robustness into a tool and removing yet another tool. I'm streamlining. And reducing the tools that I use. And so I was like, you're going to start shifting to using the Evernote Task Manager as your full-time task manager. So I want to show you some things about it, and only from the perspective, not that you need to use Evernote, but the way I'm thinking about making this shift because the tools work differently, which means I have to think differently about how I use the tool. Okay. So let me go back and show you very quickly. And just as I'm going through this, start to think, what do I currently use? It doesn't matter what it is that you use, but what do I use? And am I thinking through how I use this tool for managing my projects and my task? So this is the interface for the task manager. And if you I hope you can see this. Hey, Mr. Hicks, so glad to have you in the building. Professor Hicks in the building. You did a marvelous job running that panel. I was like, whoo wee, I'm glad I'm not on there because he would be like tearing my head up. So here's the panel for Evernote task. And there's you can just go to all of your tasks, all the things. This is not, it's not organized, it's just a running list. A running list. Then you can see what notebooks you have. I'll come back to notebooks, but what notebooks you have task in as well. Then you can say, I want to see what notes I have these tasks in. Same list of tasks, but how I'm viewing them. Then I can see by time. What do I have today versus tomorrow versus the next 7 days versus whatever future dates? Then what have I assigned to someone else? So I haven't assigned any of these other than to me, do a load of laundry. So I can see these tasks in all of these different ways. The other thing is Evernote has a default task um, note because everything in Evernote lives in a note. And every note, I'm gonna modify that. Most notes live in a notebook because now Evernote has spaces and a note can be in a space and it doesn't have to be in a notebook. So, correct my language. So, there's what's called a default notebook. If I add a task, new task, it goes into this notebook. If I don't do anything else, I call it unprocessed task. I could call it, it doesn't matter what you call it. But the thinking here is in any system, I have this even in OmniFocus. Rather than trying to organize your task when you think of them, just get them out, capture them. If you use a planner, and I can tell you number of them, you can use the Power Play planner, the Emotional CEO's planner that he has. You can use the Focus planner that James Hicks has. You can use a Hobonichi. Now y'all gonna laugh because I actually literally use all three. They have different purposes. The Hobonichi planner, if you use paper, but ultimately what really is going to get done ends up in a digital environment for me because that's the paper. I'm gonna scratch through those and do all kind of things and circle them. But that clean history, I still want to have. So wherever you're gonna make your inbox, your default place, make a decision of what you're gonna call it and where it's gonna live in your system. You just dump things in. And rather than just typing a task, because sometimes we type tasks real dumb and not real clear, put some description in there. If there's a link, if there's a reminder, if there's a whatever. When I'm first capturing, I'm not saying when, I'm not doing any of this other stuff. I'm just getting it in there and getting it out of my system. Every day, every week I go through and collate this stuff. So that's the first thing. Where when you start, you have a digital tool where you're going to just dump the task so that you can work with them later. That's mindset or thinking step number one. Evernote, Notion, ClickUp, Trello, Asana, Google Task, a Word doc, a Google Doc, doesn't matter. It works exactly the same because Apple reminders, Apple Notes, a text file, the principle is the same regardless of the tool. And that is the thing to know. The principle is exactly the same. The tool is so secondary. So once I did that, I was like, here's your default. Then I started thinking my routine task versus projects. We have projects that have a beginning and an end. They don't go on forever. They don't repeat. They have a beginning and an end. Example, the Digital Stage Summit panel discussion was a small project for me. There was going to be one day when I did something that was leading up to prepping for it, and then the panel happened and it ended. That's a project. I'm not doing that panel discussion week over week over week or month over month or whatever. It was, it started and it ended. I have this one here. I'm going to go back. I just put this in and started thinking about it. This, let me turn on Pro Mouse so I can show you. All right. So I started this project. Okay. Oh, get out of there. Started this project. Okay. Why is my Pro Mouse not working? Oh, because I don't have it turned on. I'm a dodo. All right. Called Project Fantastical Cleanup. And I made a note for it. And my first task in there is plan the Fantastical cleanup. Now, I don't have a whole bunch of tasks for that project yet because I got to plan them out. That's all I needed to capture. The other 35 tasks that come afterward, they'll come later. So when you're thinking about a project, give it a name that's going to make sense to you. Here's a tip from Florence Project Management Days. Name your project with a noun, not a verb. The verbs are the task. So name your project is a noun. We all know English, so we know the difference between a noun and a verb. So I named this project a noun, Project Fantastical Cleanup. There's no action there. It's kind of an outcome. And then start naming your task with verbs. Plan and whatever I'm planning. This one is here. Order A. That's a verb. Order. It's an action. However, next actions anywhere are nouns. They're not verbs. So understand how you're going to name your projects and how you're going to name your tasks associated with those projects. Some of your projects may not be a project. So therefore, in here, I have a note. This is something that it's going to be ongoing. I'm going to have routine things that I do or one-offs. They're not really a project. They're just a one-off. I'll throw them in there. As opposed to, I have this next actions at home. I'll move all of the things that I routinely do at the house in here. Right now, I've got wash a load of clothes because I've got a schedule for where I wash a load of clothes. When I check this off, right now it's due tomorrow. When I check it off, it'll reset to the next time that it's due. So understand when you're putting in routine, recurrent, I do this every week, I do this every 3 days, I do this once a day, whatever that happens to be, and set up your system so that those things pop up. I'm going to tell you what most people do and what Florence used to do. I would say, I know I'm going to do that, and I wouldn't write it down. Well, there are some people who know me really well. If I don't see it, I'm not even going to think about it. Out of sight, out of mind. So I have to, in order for me to do almost anything, put it where I'm going to see it. I have to externalize it in a way that I know I'm going to see it and I'm not going to miss it. Because if I don't, you bet your bottom dollar, it'll be 3 months from now before it come back to my brain. In the wrong time, at the wrong space, and I'll be like, well, I can't do anything about that now. So those are some things that I'm doing. I'm using this tool and I'm moving my system, my process from I'm not changing my process. These exact same breakdowns I have in OmniFocus, I'm simply changing the tool, but my process is remaining the same. If that made sense to you, put a 1 in the comment. If it did make sense to you, please put a 1 in the comment so that I know I'm not talking crazy to you. Any other questions? I just wanted to share that very quickly with you because that is an example of making a change in in my system, and it's really just changing a tool, and it's to simplify. It's to take one other thing out of the process. I was listening to Liz Wilcox, and she was talking about she's constantly looking for what can I take out, and I was like, yeah, that's very smart. What can I take out? What can I simplify? And that's a productivity tip. What can you take out and what can you simplify? Thank you, ma'am. All hearts and minds are clear. I appreciate that. Um, so that's what I got. If you guys don't have any questions, we're gonna go home. I'm not gonna hold you here. I promise you. I appreciate. Thank you, David Hunt. Thank you, James Hicks and Tornado, Inanea, um, Emotional CEO, Micah Flemons, and Tech Troublemaker and Frank Jackson. Thank you all 6 of you all who are here tonight. I appreciate it. And I don't take it for granted that you're going to show up because you don't have to. You got a question? Okay, you gonna slide one in. You gonna slide one in. Okay, ma'am. I see you out there. Oh, let me get it up on the channel. Okay, is there any strategy that you would consider completely outdated? Any personal productivity strategy that I would consider completely outdated? I'm gonna take it from that um perspective. Yes, there is one I would say outdated. Um, I, early years ago, back when the whole planner revolution showed up in the world, and we were all using Franklin Covey's and time um, day timers, and the ABC 1, 2, 3 that never worked for me. Let me just tell y'all. The A did. The ABC worked, but doing the 1, 2, 3 never worked in my brain ever, ever worked in my brain. But I consider that outdated. Now, I do believe in prioritization. Once you know what you're doing, you can sequence those activities in a way that it flows. And the reason the 1, 2, 3 never worked for me is because, for example, the ABC, I would have a A1, but it was really something I needed to do at home, and I was never going to be able to do it in the middle of the day. So that's where, rather than ABC 1, 2, 3, context at home, at the office, in the car, at the grocery store came in with David Allen in his Getting Things Done book. So the context, those physical contexts for me worked better than just doing an ABC 1, 2, 3 because I could never get it to be the way I wanted it to be in the way my life ran. So that would be a strategy if someone uses it and it works for them. But for me, I think it's completely outdated and frankly, it never really worked. So, welcome to the Stream Real Men Rising Walter Strong. Glad to have you in the building. Thank you for commenting. I really appreciate it. Glad to have you in the building with us this evening. Yeah. So, story about Peter for those who don't know. Peter, and I can't say his last name is I forgot what country, was on the panel yesterday. He pulled out an Evernote notebook, Evernote when they thought they were just trying to make everything. Um Used to make Moleskin notebooks, and they had stickers, and you could put stickers on the page, and you would scan the page, scan the sticker, and that page would go into Evernote into the notebook that you had assigned to that sticker. And the point that he was making is there's still something that no digital system will ever replace: the connection between the way our brain works and physically writing it down. I marvel at people who don't use any paper at all because there is a neurological, I don't know the technical, but a neurological way our brain and our minds work and make connections when we see it physically. And that act of writing on pen and paper, I don't even use it writing on the iPad. I have the Apple Pencil and I use it to doodle with, but when I'm real serious and I want to get that stuff out of me and know that it's someplace safe, I write it on paper. So yeah, dinosaur. But the thing is, Peter worked for David Allen for 10 years and he coached people um, in the GTD methodology. He coached clients. So he knows the principles and the reality of how people function. Like he said on the panel, he said something on the panel so true. I can train somebody on a principle and go back and talk to them in 2 weeks, they don't remember anything that they were trained on. And it's really bad if they don't take notes. They're not Your brain is not gonna hold that much information for that long until you go through spaced repetition, review it, review it, and then it'll sink in, and then the connections will be made. I This last 2 weeks, I've been sharing with people, the dots are starting to connect on the stuff that I'm going through because it's really truly a fire hose coming at me of information, and I'm writing. And I know the reason I'm writing all of these notes is because it's helping me connect the dots and it's making the paths, those neurological paths, solidify in my brain. So no amount of digital typing is going to replace that. So people shouldn't gasp because it works. Yeah, you found your Palm Pilot the other day and busted up laughing. Yeah, I got one around here somewhere. Um, the monochrome screen fired right up. I'd have to find a charger and charge that thing up and see what happens. I'm not gonna try that. I'm not gonna try that, but just saying. If you again, last call, if you have a question, please go ahead and throw a Q colon in and ask your question. I'll be glad to answer it. We're Next week I'm going to be talking about something new that if you're on my email list, you may have already gotten a peek at it. If you're a member of the community, you may already have gotten some notifications in the community about something, a tool that I've made, I've created, I've developed, that we'll be talking about and going through a little bit of information about the tool next week. That will hopefully sow into you. I know it will because it did me. And the reason I created it was because I needed something for myself or a way for me to solidify something. Well, hello, hello. Aubrey, this whole week has been a ooh, girl. So yeah, hey, how you doing? So glad to have you in the building. David Hunt. David Hunt. You plugged your Trio in. I had a Palm Trio too. I think I had every model that came out. That is too funny. Yeah. Those things were magical though when they came out. Like, ooh, I started using Evernote on one. That was and I'm graduated from that to a BlackBerry, an Evernote on a BlackBerry. Tell you a little of my history there. Excuse me. So I don't see any other questions. Thank you all for showing up tonight. Glad to have you here with us. And we will be back next week. I'm going to encourage you to subscribe, watch the video that's going to show up here. It's going to probably be and not probably, it will be the last Q&A, just so we make sure we're connecting people and making sure you know about the Q&As that are going on. And I will continue to do a Q&A at least once a week. I will see you guys next week, and glad to have you in the building.